What happens when you bring up that you have another offer but aren't looking to leave? If you have a good working relationship with your team, chances are that the company would try to see if they can counter your offer. In the last episode, that's what happened. I brought up to my manager, my CSO, and my team lead that I had another offer that enabled me to pursue my life priorities of moving to Taiwan. I was lucky that the response I got was that they would try to think about creative ways about whether there was a way that I could stay. I was happy to hear that because I loved my job. Hi, I'm Kristine. I used to be a brand strategist in New York City, and you are watching my mini vlog series of quitting my dream job. This is episode 2, the negotiation till the very end. She said that she has an update and she just spoke to HR, so I don't know what to expect. Let's see. Shortly after the conversation with my executive director in the last video, she got back with an answer from HR in about 3 or 4 hours early in the afternoon of what were the initial reactions from HR and the likelihood of getting approval from corporate. The bright side was she reiterated and reinforced the consensus that the team doesn't want me to leave. However, from HR, she learned that it was very highly unlikely that we would hear back from the company for another 2 or 3 weeks. So the question was, how much time did I really have before I had to make a decision? I mean, I wish I had more time, and I know the reality that the organization moves slow. One bright side is I know it does have offices in Taiwan. It's just other agencies. There is physical footprint there. I was initially pretty hopeful that there would be possibility of me being remote and working from Taiwan because one of the hurdles of tax purposes, I know our group company had offices in Taiwan. Even though it was not our specific company or subsidiary, we had presence, so the tax issue would be solved. However, it was not that easy. HR told my team lead that my chances were likely less than 50-50. So we circled back on the option of whether I would be able to freelance while I was in Taiwan and still work for the New York team as I do today. I mean, I honestly love the work that we do. There's a part of me that really wants to make it happen. To your point, freelance might be a more realistic and easier option for like all of us, to be honest. For me, I know the realities of the business and I know the realities of freelance, and I don't want that uncertainty in the way that if I lose this freelance job, then I don't have a job. So I think, is there a possibility where I still freelance and still take the offer? Is that something that is open to having someone that is a freelancer but also has another job? I was really determined that I did not want to leave my job if I didn't have to. I'm really thankful that my team lead is looking out for me. She reminded me that it was not reasonable for me to want to do vampire hours for the foreseeable future of working from Taiwan, still being able to keep my full-time job and also having to do a freelance job. I knew at the bottom of my mind that it probably wasn't likely, however, I still wanted to try. Then she reminded me that it was okay, that if it doesn't work out for me to be remote fully, then maybe I just consider taking this full-time job. Because knowing my relationship with my company and my coworkers, it was very likely that if I ever wanted to come back, I would always have a home and place there, which was very, very touching to hear. It's good to know that if this doesn't happen in the way that works right now, it's good to know that there would always be an opportunity to potentially, I guess, still work together. I guess my understanding of freelance is that there's different levels of it. I know I've worked with like the freelancers where they would be on one project and it wouldn't be like crazy. That's maybe like where my head's at. I was so determined on making it work, trying to explore all routes that I would be able to stay with my team, even if it meant moonlighting for 10 to 20 hours every week. and my team lead told me that she would try to explore with HR. She knew that the team would be stoked of having me, even though partially, of 10 to 20 hours a week. But then our conversation was again cut short because we had active projects going on. So that's where we left off. She's gonna figure it out with HR, and I was just working the day-to-day, waiting to see what HR comes back with. Okay, thank you. Bye. HR meeting. Let's go. I don't know what to expect. Scared. About a full week later, HR was able to get back to me, and it came off as really surprised because she chatted me and said if I had 15 minutes. I did not know what to expect, whether it was nice or bad, but it was the first time that I talked to HR about all of this. So she again asked me about the background, and I gave her my whole spiel again. I don't want to leave if I don't have to, but I did talk about like the potential of freelancing, and I know that's an option. However, with the other opportunity, I wouldn't be able to freelance unless if I were just full-time freelancing. That's an option I not only entertain, but I like fully welcome. Just to be completely transparent, that's kind of where I'm at. So while I've been waiting to hear back from my HR, I also went to the other company to see if they had a problem with me still freelancing for my previous company. I knew the answer was likely no, and the answer was no. I guess I could have just not asked, but I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. So that's where I started the conversation, letting them know that it was either me full in freelance for you or I leave completely. Then my HR laid out all the options that we had in front of us and the likelihood of making those happen. The first was remote status. It was very likely that I would not be able to get an answer for another 2 or 3 weeks. And even then, it was, as she put it, there was a possibility, but not very likely probability. The second option was me potentially transitioning to a global team. However, the hurdles there was that my company didn't have an office in Taiwan, even though our group had, so that didn't work. And also, on top of that, there wasn't any openings in the global team right now, so it would be a moment before I would be able to transition and wait for them to have an opening. And then the third option was freelancing full-time. That they could control of being able to give me 40 hours of work, just like I did today. That makes sense. Appreciate you for kind of finding all that out. I know it's not the easiest process with everything floating around and so many options. I'm curious about the kind of full-time freelance. I asked that question because from my point of view, I knew that the industry was not thriving as it was a couple of years ago. So from what I've heard is that everyone is cutting down on freelance. So I was personally not very comfortable with that idea of no stability. And she acknowledged that technically, yes, freelance had less stability. But she also then joked about how we were all at-will employees and technically our jobs weren't stable to begin with. But there are still differences of being a full-time employee, like healthcare, and she wanted to still acknowledge that. And I wanted to find out more. I guess aside from healthcare, are there any other things that would potentially change with status? She laid it out for me about the difference. For example, right now I could get reimbursed for my phone bill, and that would have to change if I'm a freelancer. Also, I wouldn't be able to get the mentorship that I do as today, or be able to join on company events and being able to fly out to the holiday party or things like that. But then she also mentioned that if I was still in the US, if I were a freelancer, the ways that I would do my taxes is different. So I would be able to write off different things like rent or phone bill. Because the difference in how I was getting paid and the way that I was filing my taxes, it might actually be beneficiary from a monetary stand of view. But that's all things that I would have to look into. Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. I guess maybe the other question that's most affecting any decision would be like, I know previously when I went back to Taiwan, I still worked New York hours. That wouldn't be possible if I were to physically be there permanently. From an HR perspective, is that possible for me to be completely, or like the majority would be off sync hours?
And that's maybe where the miscommunication came in and where the dream started to fall apart. My team told HR that I would be still very flexible about working hours. But from my view, I would be able to be flexible, but only on a very limited basis. Then my HR told me that although we did have a lot of freelancers that work different hours, for example, being from Europe, Asia was a different story just because of the complete flip in time zone and time difference. So then we had to go back and talk to the team about whether they would be able to put me on enough projects that I would be able to be off sync completely.
It could be like an overlap of a couple of hours, maybe like 2 to 3 max. Let me know on what the team thinks, and I think potentially there could be like a middle ground. Also help me understand like would salary change. I guess for me, if I'm still like full-time and change to an hourly rate, that would help me.
Although I wouldn't be paid for sick days or PTO anymore, I am getting paid per hour on a higher hourly rate than before. So on average, I might be getting paid the same amount or even more. Previously, I heard that in some cases, freelancers get paid more than the company CEO. Don't quote me on that because I've actually never seen the rates, but it might be a rumor or it might be true.
Appreciate you for sharing all of that with me. It would help me to make a more informed decision if I knew kind of like everything was laid out on the table and I kind of could be able to imagine what my life would be like.
I really love my employees and love my HR. She promised me that she would get to me as much information as she could in the littlest time possible. And we promised that we would talk soon. And then it was more waiting.
Thank you so much, Julie. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Two days go by before my HR rep was able to give me an update. And I actually only had 5 or 10 minutes to chat before I had to go off to my next meeting, which was a workshop. However, I still wanted to chat with her to see what was the latest from my company. And the unfortunate news was that they weren't able to get me approved, and it was confirmed that for me to stay at the company, I would have to change to freelance and work, even though still full-time, but it would be a full-time freelance employment option. And that began my decision process of would I want to stay with my current job, although switch to freelance, or start my new life with a new job in Taiwan. Throughout the entire negotiation process, I didn't specifically get into the compensation and negotiating the pay with my company. It was more so understanding what would my life realistically be like and what were the job stability looking like if I were to transition to freelance. My company did, however, mention that they feel confident that they would be very competitive with the compensation even if I transition to freelance. However, for me, that wasn't really the top of mind. I will get into more of a decision process in the next one. For this one, I wanted to talk more about just the process. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know down below, and I will see you in the next one, the last one of the Quitting My Job series. I'll see you next time. Bye!